have Alan McMonagle. Alan has written for radio and published 2 short story collections, Liar Liar and Psychotic Episodes. Ithaca, his first novel, has just been published by Picador and was immediately nominated. Immediately nominated for the Desmond Elliott Award. They didn't wait. They couldn't for first novels. And he lives in Galway. And we also have Billy O'Callaghan from Cork, local boy. Yes. Yeah, we like a bit of that. And he's the author of 3 short story collections, In Exile, In Too Deep, The Things We Lose, The Things We Leave Behind, which was published by New Island Books and which won the 2013 board. That's like Irish Gas. How do you say it?
Gosh.
Gash?
Gosh.
I say that. That sounds like a culture from Northern Ireland. Energy Irish Book Award for Short Story of the Year, and it was selected as Cork's One City, One Book for 2017. His first novel, The Dead House, was published by Mercier Press, Brandon Books in May, and he has a novella coming out with the Ploughshares Solo. But he is going to read first for us tonight. So if you give him a wee round of applause, welcome him up.
Okay, I'm actually I'm on foreign ground here because I'm from the south side. So this is strange territory to me. But okay, I'm going to read. All my stories are long. Well, a lot of them are long. This one is. I'm going to read a piece of the story. So I'll just give you the basic gist of the story. It's about a young orphan boy who is basically sold into slavery to a farmer in 1960s West Cork. I only learned recently that this was actually still happening up into the 90s, so which surprised me. But anyway, I'm just going to read a piece of the story. The boy's name is Thomas, and okay, I'll just start. On Thursday morning the wind shifts and a new calm descends. The rain still falls and the sky remains heavy through most of the day, but on towards evening the cloud splits. Thomas spends the greater part of the afternoon on one of the shed roofs, trying to pin down sheets of corrugate that have lifted in the wind, and it is quite late when he discovers that one of the cows, probably spooked by the recent storms, has wandered off from the herd and is missing. His first reaction is to panic. McNamara has burdened him with the responsibility of the cattle's well-being, and this cow, one of the late-season calving stock and nearing full term, is of considerable value to the farm. He tries to calculate how much light remains in the day, but his thoughts are in turmoil. A band of cloud lies yellow and dimming in the west, bulked with yet more rain, and darkness will bring terror for the animal. Deciding that a stop at the cottage would waste too much time, he starts out across the fields, letting the fall of the land lead him, mumbling prayers as he walks, a litany that feels separate from himself, and quickly takes on the soft outward caress of mantra. The words spill from him, whispers at first, then as vibrations close to sound, their rhythm finding steady time above the slam of blood pulsing in his ears. He tells himself that he'll find her, that he knows this land better than anyone, and that even if darkness comes down, he'll be okay, because out here the night holds no terror. But for 20 minutes he stumbles into nothing but empty fields, with footing difficult and in places treacherous. His mind is tormented by images of the cow thrashing about in some dyke, or snagged in a tangle of downed barbed wire. The land rises behind and on his left, and the evening has taken on a sense of compression, but then he clears a brow and sees her standing calm and still beside an overgrown boundary wall at the bottom of the most recently reclaimed field, staring westward. He almost calls out but catches himself, slows his pace and eases through a gap in the ditch. After a minute or two she notices him but does not move, and he approaches slowly, mumbling a gibberish canticle that works well with animals. He steps beside her and begins to stroke her neck. She moans once, but still doesn't flinch, and his heart pounds in his chest like something soft and trapped, clattering against the walls of a drum. When he can steady himself, he slips a thin noose of rope over the animal's head and coaxes her into walking. The ground beneath their feet is soup, the natural incline draining everything through this part of the field. They struggle up the slope, side by side, labouring into every step, then begin to veer right towards the open gate. He keeps to the cow's left, level with her bowed head, and leading only occasionally with the lean of his body against her shoulder, thinking of little beyond the next step. He regrets leaving his staff back in the yard with the rest of the herd, the stout supporting 5 foot length of knuckled blackthorn that would have made this climb a lot easier. But its loss is a small thing. He has fought this field to a standstill, has salted its dirt with blood and sweat, and now when he is most in need, it is doing right by him. Tears of relief burn his eyes. The rope is coiled around one hand, but as a gesture, nothing more. He presses on, leaning sidelong into the pitch of the land and feeling the ground beneath him pull away from every step. But he can't stop, knowing the importance of making it back to the yard before night comes fully down. Already the air has dimmed to a sickly twilight, and vast yellow and dirt-brown continents of cloud heave with the menace of further rain. He can see the ditch ahead and fixes on that, and the open gate that will lead them to ground of less severe gradient. The hour has an eerie stillness, a sense that the storm's respite will be brief. And though facing the incline refracts distance the same way water does with depth, he is forced to trust that every forward step is a step closer to safety. He keeps up the nonsense sounds, the soothing coax that sometimes slips into 3 or 4 bars of song, anything with melody, anything that comes to mind, and overestimates the distance to the gate at 50 paces, then 40, just to set a goal. 40 paces and the gap of the open gate is close enough that even in the dying light he can identify the puncture wounds of his own incoming footsteps in the mud. Then he wades into ground no longer quite solid enough to hold his weight, and he goes down. The mud slops cold and wet and very soft against his back, and the words of whatever he is singing jar against his breath, and for a second or two all he can see is sky. He even begins to smile because it is bad but not so bad, but then the cow begins to flail in search of balance, lowing wildly and tossing her head, and when her legs give, all her weight comes down on him, 1,200 pounds of heaving, bucking meat, pressing him deeper into the pulped ground. Time loses all shape and substance against his struggles to escape. He attempts to drag himself free, pleading with and beating at the cow in an effort to encourage some movement until weariness overtakes him. He closes his eyes, tries to suck air in through clenched teeth, and has to settle for the grainy wisp that cools his mouth but achieves little else. There is no pain yet, but his breathing is constricted by the weight of the animal lying sideways across him in collapse, pinning down his chest, stomach, groin and thighs, her massive girth trembling with fear. One of his arms is trapped, but he stretches out his free arm, his left, over her back and shoulder, and strokes the fleece of coarse matted hair. Even when she turns silent, he can feel her heat and the chase of a heart that is either hers or the unborn calf's. After the efforts at escape, there is a kind of joy to be had in giving up. He understands on some level that he is being crushed, and that he'd be either dead already or else lying here in an agony of splintered bones awaiting death, if not for the softness of the earth. With his eyes closed, there is only sensation, the weight, the tightness of his chest, the heat above and the chill of the mud against his back. Wanting some restoration of order, he begins to count breaths. It is not a measure of actual time, but it helps, lends him focus. And after a slow 50, he opens his eyes again and finds that the cloud mass has darkened to a step removed from night and grown devoid of feature. Dusk and the sky's ashen screed fuse in a fog of blindness, and off across the fields, somewhere to the east, a curlew screams. The sound stabs and leaves a shard of itself echoing in the late hour until he shifts his head and the mud sucks him down a little more and clogs his ears with the sigh of waves. The sense of calm surprises him. Everything has its own way of ending. And even as the crushing intensifies and the mud coats his ears and cheeks and closes in a cold film across his throat to further constrict his intake of breath, the panic doesn't overwhelm him. The sounds of the world begin to exist only internally. Even the patchwork song that, to appease the animal, has again begun to dribble from his lips. He listens to the words from deep inside and realizes without surprise that they have become prayers set to melody, and they help, or perhaps are mere expressions of his calm. And as he prays, his thoughts are with Margaret and the pictures of his mother, and he feels sorrow for one and regret for the other, even as tears build in his eyes. They burst, exploding the sky, and it is full seconds before he understands that it has begun to rain again. A slop of mud squeezes into the corner of one eye, and he has to strain very hard to lift his head. By turning to one side and then the other, he gains an inch or two of elevation, but such respite is temporary. He forces himself to concentrate on Margaret. That day she visited and held his hand, but earlier days too, better ones. She cries easily, but it is her laughter that he wants to remember now. Yet even as he tries to focus on those good memories, the darkness, possibly in collusion with his prayers, awakens other thoughts, and his serenity is broken by a vision of Brother Thady, thin and long-faced, middle 50s or even older, with his small red mouth, sunken blue-grey cheeks and the rheumy eyes of a night walker. He had taken Thomas to one of the rooms used for storage at the back of the school and made him unbutton his shirt, remove his trousers and lie down on his back on the hard flagstone floor. The cold of the mud has some of that same coldness, and the coldness of those bony hands fingering and grasping at his chest and stomach, pinching his tiny nipples and poking at his navel in a way that itched and then quickly hurt. Hitting him too when he began to cry, hitting him again hard enough to make his nose bleed when he tried to squeeze his eyes shut. And later, after washing their bodies clean with the same piece of flannel cloth and a basin of cold water, holding him tight, wiping away the tears and kissing him for a long time on the mouth, telling him what a good boy he was, what a beautiful boy, and that Jesus loved him and would forgive him all his sins, no matter how terrible. Only now does he think about the possibility of rescue. The cattle are in, but McNamara often checks the yard and barn before going to bed, and Thomas begins to hope that his absence will be noted. There will be the usual display of anger, the shouts and threats and name-calling, maybe even a hard hand across the head. But he'll explain what has happened, and if necessary beg forgiveness, a second chance. And he knows that whatever the farmer might say, there is still that fourth field to be salvaged, still work that needs doing. The sky has been overcome by night, the early cumbrous dark of wet nights, and the rain falls soft but steady. McNamara will find him, but it could be an hour yet, even two. And he knows that he must stay awake, Again, mud seeps into the corners of his eyes. It stings and hurts worse when he swabs at them with his free hand. But the pain at least helps to keep him alert and lets him know that while an end might be approaching, it has not arrived quite yet. More faces crowd his mind, a parade that disintegrates even as it looms. He knows it is his past unwinding, full of shapes he once forgotten, and his way of repressing is to conjure up the West he knows only from his books, wild and baked to dust, full of braves and gunslingers, full of men and women too, who have seen the sky from the gutter and who understand what is right and what is worth fighting for. People of the soil like him, living small and barely perceptible lives. He leans back his head to ease the stiffness in his neck, and the mud closes in across his forehead and cheeks and fills the craters around his clenched eyelids. The angle keeps his mouth and nose clear, and he breathes in small sips of an air that has taken on the sour mineral tinge of rain. Across his chest, the cow lets out a long sorrowful low, then lurches with sudden violence in one final attempt at rising. The weight shifts, and for perhaps 5 or even 10 seconds, Thomas is free. He lifts his trapped hand and flexes the fist, waiting for the numbness to abate. But then the cow's legs give out, and she spills across him again, her bulk snapping his arm at the wrist, crushing his chest, and driving him hard into the hillside. Something jars loose inside of him, some cog jerked from its workings, and all thought withers as pain whitens his mind. He gasps, lacking the air and power to scream, until runnels of mud fill his mouth, his throat, everything, strangling him, and he goes under. Thank you very much. I just want to dedicate this story to a visitor that I have from Japan, translating my stories at the moment, Shoko Kenanari. She's sitting up the back there, so this is for you, Shoko.
You take this one, and I think from last night I know that you have to hold it quite far like that.
Okay.
You can hear it, yeah? Alright. Whoa, I have to take a little moment with that story. And that's not all of it either, is it?
No, it gets worse from there.
And do you think, it just struck me when I was listening to it, it's very powerful. I was thinking that the short story allows you to go dark and stay there. I think a novel, I don't think people can tolerate it for that length of time. They need shade, they need light then, they need to kind of have a journey that takes them and leaves them a breath in between. Do you think that, would you agree, and would you say that that's something you find in your stories?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me. Yeah,
Thanks very much.
I do agree. Yeah, you couldn't take too much of that, I think the story is about 8,000 words. That's more than enough, Small lives fit into small short stories.
Yeah.
But they can have more power because of that, I think. If that was stretched out over the whole, over the length of a novel, it would just lose its power. So.
Do you think a short story form allows you to go darker than you might do in a novel?
I suppose, yeah. I mean, it sort of dwells within a narrow corridor, so it's concentrated, intense, and yeah, I think you can.
You like a bit of darkness.
Wow.
Psychotic Episodes was the last collection, wasn't it?
That's very, grandiose title, perhaps, a bit misleading, perhaps too. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing about darkness, and helps throw into relief moments that are human humorous as well, and of course vice versa. But you know, there's a great guy in Galway. He's a professor on the he comes in with a blank sheet of paper to students, and he says he's a poet himself. I mean, this is a poem about happiness, you know, and it's a blank piece of paper. So I think with writing, you're always pushing against something or towards something, and I don't think it's necessarily a happy place.
Yeah, they say happiness writes right, don't they? So, I was interested. You were saying you had your Japanese translator. Am I right in thinking this has just been translated in Chinese as well?
Well, it's going to come out in Chinese in this month. It was supposed to come out in July, but there was an issue with one story that's set in Taiwan. So for political reasons, it had to be. It was only a couple of sentences. There was the story references the first democratic elections in Taiwan, which the Chinese don't really want to hear or acknowledge. And so it was explained to me, the publisher explained that they won't ban the books anymore in China, they'll just make them disappear. They'll stop them from going into bookshops, so, you know, that's their life gone. So my choice was to take out the story or, you know, do something with 2 lines. So I did that, but it delayed the process a little bit, but it's coming out in a couple of weeks. So yeah.
I mean, what you're normally worried about is like if you've written something like with my Northern Irish, you know, dialect or something. You know, and I was thinking, oh, it would be some expressions in Cork. From Cork, they could be worried about. This is like proper, serious political problems that they're talking about, isn't it? Really?
Well, I mean, I don't know how serious it is, but it's you know, as I said, it's only 2 lines. But yeah, I mean, there's some writers I could imagine would have a lot of trouble with their stuff in translation because of dialect, and well, I don't tend to write in that style. You know, my stuff isn't dialect heavy, so it was very smooth. The whole thing was very smooth, so yeah, there was no problem.
Do you think that when you're writing a short, because you've had your novel come out this year, it's done very well, and it's but you're known as a short story. You have three short story collections.
Yeah.
Do you think it's short stories occupy a different part of your creative brain? Do you know what I mean? The novels, it's like, is it like a whole different set of skills, or do you think there's lots of crossover?
I think they occupy all of my creative brain. Short stories, excuse me. That's short stories are what I love to write. Even when I was writing the novel, I never thought of it as a novel until I was, you know, 50,000 words in. It was a short story, and I was preparing to cut big chunks out of it, and it eventually. Then I was thinking to myself that maybe a novella, I could call this a novella, which is still really a short story, just a long one, and that maybe it would find a place in a collection at some point, but it ended up what it was, without me aiming in that direction. I have been writing another novel. It's finished now, and I did really find it hard going. I think my brain is just set to the short story form. You know, it's what I love to write. It's the way when I get an idea, it forms itself as a short story. So, for better or worse, that's where I'm stuck.
Alan, how's your brain?
Quote another poet, I think was it Philip Larkin, of all people, who said a good story should have a beginning, a muddle, and an end. So my brain is a muddle most of the time. I published the first slim volume collection of short stories, very much baby steps, but I'm happy to obviously proud to get the book out. I thought I was all set now to, you know, sit down and begin the novel, and very quickly and immediately nothing happened. Immediately, yeah, that word again. And you know, I let the gears inside my head do their thing, you know. I was in pain and just realised slowly that still had unfinished business with the short story. It wasn't just going to be shut down like that. And so I began to work on a second collection of stories. And, perfectly happy to do that. And it was only, you could see the stories were developing and characters, voice, tone, all of that was evolving, developing all the time, I thought anyway. It was only really two collections of short stories in that I decided to have another stab at a novel, a more successful stab. But again, initially I could feel the gears grinding inside me. I mean, I thought initially, wisely, I could spend part of my time working on the novel and another time just nudging along stories in the various stages of development and completion. But very quickly the law of diminishing returns kicked in. I had to make a choice, So yeah, I mean, it is definitely a different part of back here. It's all back there anyway, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah.
So it sounds like even though you both went over the dark side for a while, that you come back to the light. So, but I was thinking, because I'm trying to marry these two thoughts in my head. One is that you're saying, that you're a short story writer and your mind's wired that way, but I know you've also said that your short stories are getting longer, and your next release is the novella, and so in some way it also seems like there's an organic process going on there, whether your brain is set that way or not, that you are going for longer work.
That's no, it's just the way that there was a time when I could manage to write a 2,000 word short story. Now I can't clear my throat in 2,000 words. It's just the way it's gone. I don't know. Maybe I would hope the stories are getting better and that they're I've gone into them in greater depth, and maybe there's just more to tell. But they're still short stories. But now, instead of falling maybe 3,000 to 6,000 words, they're sort of 5,000 to 10,000 words. And the longer they get, the harder they are to get published, So, for me, it's gotten to the point where at this point I've published a lot of stories now in magazines, and probably 100 stories, and I've just stopped worrying about that. The stories I write are the stories I want to write. When I start the story, I suppose this is some inbuilt inferiority complex that I must have, but I never imagined that anyone is ever going to read them, and I never imagined they're going to be good enough to send anywhere in the writing, and so that's very freeing to me. It allows me to put anything I want into them. Maybe there's things that you mightn't want your mother to read, but when you think nobody's going to read them, you can put it into the story. Once the story is finished and you decide that it might be good enough to send out, you don't really care then if your mother reads it. It doesn't really matter, So I don't know. I sort of have stopped worrying about any kind of constrictions, whether a magazine will want to publish them or a journal, whether they're too long or they just are what they are now. You talk about going over to the dark side, and I do have another novel finished, and it took me about 7 years, and I wrote it while writing stories, and I kept throwing it down, and I kicked the wall a few times, and I broke a few toes, and I got through it, and I'm pretty happy with it now. I mightn't be in 6 months, that's the problem, and I might want to start it again. But I've also finished a new collection, so I have to face that dreaded part of the whole thing now and see if anybody wants to publish it. But anyway, they're done, so it's on to new stuff now for me. So.
Right. Okay. Do you fancy we reading?
Yeah.
I should go on. Just give him a wee round of applause and warm him up there.
I was going to read a very dark story, but I've changed my mind. I've probably chickened out, to be honest. I'm going to read a story from this collection, Psychotic Episodes. Just give me a moment to find it. And I'm going to let the title comprise my introduction to it. And I'll just read from there. The night my sister almost fixed me up with a porn star. Jennifer is always trying to fix me up. Hello there, she says to many a bemused beauty. This is my only brother. He has poor coping skills, but will make a considerate lover. I am not exactly sure what it is she is trying to accomplish with this provocative introduction. Nor, as far as I can make out, are her chosen targets for my selfless, though flawed affections. There is no such thing as a considerate lover, a girl said back to her the other day. He is no good to me if he cannot cope, replied another. Neither reaction deters Jennifer from her romantic quest. Little is accomplished when I speak out against her methods. Daniel, you are grieving, she declares. You need a woman. Jennifer, I don't need anything, I reply. Least of all, love advice from a celibate older sister. Nobody knows what they need, she answers with a petulant wave of her hands. But I know one thing. There is nothing nicer than a woman's body. Here we go again, I murmur to myself. As do other family members whenever Jennifer gets it inside her head precisely what it is any of us needs. We tend to tolerate Jennifer because she is the eldest, likes to spend her money, and practices an extreme form of Tai Chi. Meantime, the rest of us mark our own lives according to some forever fixed moment of personal crisis. The time I fell from a rooftop, for example, and smashed head first through a pane of glass, leaving me with a cross-shaped scar in the gap between my eyebrows. Or the time Frankie decided that she wanted to save Uganda and legged it without bothering to tell anyone. Or the time Lorraine announced to everyone that she was getting engaged to an Eastern philosophy student who liked to steal cars. Or the time the same sister announced that the engagement was off and that she was 5 months pregnant. Not for Jennifer, these life is stranger than fiction fiascos. Her rumble through life's jungle is a more modest affair. Putting herself behind people is her preference, and surrendering her own priorities to the wants of others. Jennifer parcels out her life in favours, keeping an eye out on my behalf, babysitting when Lorraine has a hot date with the latest contemplated felon in her life, maintaining contact with faraway Frankie to ensure the runaway has adequate supplies of cheese and onion potatoes, chef brown sauce, and Oatfield chocolate emeralds. As though these little acts of worth represents the anchors Jennifer must reach for whenever she finds it all getting away from her. For Jennifer, affirmation arrives by way of her pocketbook of good intentions, as opposed to the elaborate dramas orchestrated by her nearest and dearest. Someone has to be the lookout, his or her claim in defence or a constant vigilance. This heightened sense of responsibility leaves her in a permanent state of unrest. She can never wait to be a good doer. Sexually, I'm self-destructive, Jennifer says, when I ask why she doesn't apply any of this finding love assistance to herself. For me, there is little hope, she continues, after an intense moment or two, as though she has just sourced and accepted some higher judgment in the matter. I suppose I'm a bit like you, she concludes. I don't know how to translate grief into language that can be understood. What grief, I say back to her. There, she soothes, going at my back with her hand. When it comes to finding my elusive maiden, the music gig is Jennifer's preferred arena. Jennifer and I go to a lot of gigs together. Before life as an office girl, she worked in a record shop, and the shop manager still passes her the occasional complimentary CD. The shop manager loved Jennifer because she was so enthusiastic in her work. I used to think it was a fake enthusiasm, put on for effect, to reassure an uncertain country and western fan, to sway a dithering jazz lover, to charmingly persuade the entire music-buying public that she had a special place in her heart for their favourite brand of music. I have to tell you that is an excellent choice, she would say, no matter what ridiculous music CD her customer was on the verge of purchasing. One morning, I was browsing in the music shop, and I looked on in horror as she fell over herself to compliment a businessman wanting to buy for his wife a CD of Roxette's greatest hits. I can't believe you let that guy think he has taste in music, I said later. Everybody has taste, she threw back at me. Some like it with the merest touch of zest. Others prefer it lumpy and without meat. In the end, it doesn't matter. We all end up in the same cooking pot. At tonight's gig, Good Time Ray has returned by popular demand. I remember seeing him some time back. If memory serves, Good Time Ray's idea of a good time is to sit on a low stool with his guitar and sing about the rain. Tonight he begins his set with a number called Persistent Drizzle. I like this town, he calls in between his guitar chords. It reminds me of a sad story. Let me share my sad story with you beautiful people. Beside me, Jennifer is a finely tuned antenna. Already she is scanning the venue, looking to pick out some ambivalent angel likely to inspire untapped reactions inside me. Soon she ventures out on patrol. Returning to where I stand, she reaches out to drag me. I think this could be the one, she says, hauling me across the crowded floor. I've had words, found out a thing or two. Boys where this girl comes from are a lot like you. They're not territorial or physically capable. They have a vague sense of belonging. They do not acknowledge stop signs or seek comfort in late-night football. In her town, she says that thanks to girls like her, grieving is a thing of the past. I listened to this little speech and wondered what stop signs she is talking about. Also, I'm as willing as the next lad to watch football through the night, if Brazil is playing. Daniel, this is Carleen, Jennifer says when she finds who she is looking for. Carleen is from Portland. She speaks husky English. She has crossed the Atlantic to find a man. Carleen, this is Daniel. He has poor coping skills, but will make a considerate lover. Her good work done, she then disappears. The Portland girl is sucking a straw pointing out of an umbrella cocktail. She is lean and sallow-skinned, athletic-looking, with straight sandy hair reaching halfway down her back. She is wearing a short denim skirt and an imposing black singlet with glittery writing. Lazy days, the writing says. She also wears an ankle bracelet and a pair of Birkenstocks. Her toenails are painted to match the glittery writing. I knew of a tennis player called Carleen, I said, from Toronto. I think she once made it to round 4 at Wimbledon. It's Carling, not Carleen. Your name is Carling? Yes, the tennis player too. As in the light-hearted lager. I don't know if it's light-hearted. I don't drink it. I hear it sells well in England. Carling, that is. Never been there, she says. Portland, I say. That's in Canada, right? Wrong. You don't often ask questions, do you? You can ask a question if you like. What is your porn star name? I beg your pardon? I need to know your porn star name. It's one of the ways I have of telling. Telling what, I say, if we are meant to be together. Before I have a chance to respond, Good Time Ray takes time out from his set to engage with his audience. I realized something when it rained, he calls, idly strumming his guitar. My girl no longer had the hots for me. Let's sing a song about the girl I lost. There is respectful applause as he launches into a burdensome number called It's Raining in My Heart. At first it's just a localized shower. Soon it becomes a torrential downpour. By the time the last chorus comes round, the whole world is underwater. Throughout it all, however, Good Time Ray can still glimpse the stars. How can he see the stars if it's raining all the time? Someone calls out a little too loud. I was in a great humour until he opened his mouth, says another. What do you think of the musician? I asked Carly. He's like the weather, she answers. Goes from bad to worse. He's a local musician, I say. He's been banging on about the rain for a long time. I don't think he's ever toured. I'm pretty sure he's never set foot outside this town. This town is a lot like Portland, Carling says. The weather, the bridges, the vibe. There is a good vibe, I say, like someone who has never before heard the word. All my stuff is in Portland, Carling says. My clothes, my records. I have a car in Portland. You should come. We have a chance of being together. I don't know my porn star name, I say. Yes, you do, Carling says. Everybody has a porn star name. What's yours, I ask. Fluffy Carty. I'm not crazy about it, but I'm stuck with it. Why are you stuck with it? It's how porn star names work. You take the name of your first pet and combine it with your mother's maiden name. It's the golden rule with porn star names. So I am Fluffy Carty. I'm Rex Maguire, I say, after taking a moment to apply her special rule. Rex Maguire, she repeats after me. I like that. I like it a lot. I think I like yours, I say back. Rex and Fluffy, she said. I think I can see a future for a couple called Rex and Fluffy. Are you really a considerate lover? Only in my dreams. In reality, I'm actually quite the lazy bones, I reply, looking at the writing on her singlet. And I also have poor coping skills. Where I come from, I am considered extremely forbearing. I can help you cope. It's looking good for us, I say. It is, isn't it, she says. What other ways have you of telling? Before Carling has a chance to answer, I am grabbed and hauled away. Jennifer shuffles me toward the exit door, glancing anxiously over her shoulder with every step she takes. I'm so sorry, she whispers in my ear as we move. We reach the door, and I turn back for one last glimpse of the Portland girl. But it is difficult to see through the bunching crowd. Steady but persistent hand clapping is encouraging Good Time Ray to do another song. I realized one last thing in the rain, he says to his devoted followers, plucking at his trusty companion. A guitar and a six-pack, that's all I need. This is my last song. It's called I Hope It's Raining on the Day I Die. That was a narrow escape, Jennifer says, after she has dragged me around the corner from the music venue, all the time checking over her shoulder. I take back everything I'd said about that girl. She definitely is not the one to take you from your grieving. What grieving, I say back, throwing my hands into the cold night. There, Jennifer says, and she starts rubbing my back in slow circles. Thanks.
You take that one now. Oh, have a drink. Thanks. Settle your nerves. I was thinking, there's the cliche of the short story writer who goes into the agent or the publisher and says, here's my short story collection, I've spent my whole life working on this, it's everything. They go, that's great, have you got a novel? And I just wonder, did you ever have that kind of experience? Most writers I know had that experience, short story writers, and did that influence you at all in the decision to write a novel?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course it did. But I was at a festival in Drummondere toward the end of 2013, and Eleanor Hooker, a great curator there, put me on the platform with Donal Ryan, Julian Goff, and Paul Lynch. And unbeknownst to me at the time, Paul Lynch, he went out and picked up a copy of the stories, and he just literally posted it over to his own agent in London, and he didn't tell me he'd done that. And I got an email out of the blue. That was maybe October. The following, about 4 months later, early into the following year, got an email out of the blue. Very nice, succinctly put together. Very, very good actually from a short story writing point of view. Put together paragraphs summing up the agent's take on the stories, and then he said some nice things, appreciative. But yeah, and then came the PS. By the way, are you writing a novel? But it just so happened that I had begun Ithaca, and so I just said yes. And he politely told me to chop. But there's at the same time, there's nothing like an email to put a bit of fire.
Yes.
To put a bit of we had to put the burners on, and so I did chop really. In my case, I tried, but I just wasn't able to write short stories at the same time. The novel is it's a slow accumulation, and you've got to write on. With the short story, you're writing and you're rewriting all the time. So I just found it two very different ways of working. And you have to write on when it comes to a novel. You must literally write down every thought that comes into your head. Most of these thoughts will eventually be discarded, but at the same time, it won't get done otherwise. That was my experience anyway.
Did you ever feel that kind of pressure, Willie?
I don't really feel pressure.
Look at it. No, you should like.
No, because honestly, I'm not. It's probably my downfall that I'm never able to respond. If a publisher said to me, "Are you working on a novel?" I couldn't say I was. I'd say, "I have a collection of short stories. Do you want it or not?"
Hardball.
But it's not. It's not that. That's my own. That's my flaw, I suppose. If I got an email, I could probably compose it better. But when I have to speak, my foot always ends up some part of my mouth. No. Every time I've ever had a short story collection published, I was always told there better be a novel coming. That's why I keep bouncing publisher to publisher, I suppose. I've never had the opportunity for, publisher has never said to me, "Have you got a novel? Can we have a look at it?" Does that answer your question? Or not?
I'll take that. I remember you'd mentioned something about the experience that you had with the first editor of Ithaca, your novel, and helping you through the transition from short story writer to novelist. And tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was very happy to catch the second half of Nuala and Tanya, because Nuala was talking about the episodic nature of her novels, but how that writing in that mode appeals to her. And I suppose I'd go along with that as well. I was, just to get some calibre of draft out of me, I was writing these bite-sized chapters and giving them all little cutesy, punchy, too clever titles, And I remember, this would have been probably the best part of a year on again. I'd finally sent a manuscript to Ivan, my agent, and he told me he was going to pass it on to his editor. And he actually even rang me. It was the day after New Year's Day, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and he said, "You're going to get an email in a few minutes' time. It's quite a robust email, and depending on how you respond to this email will determine the fate of your novel." And honestly, sure enough, I got this email. I opened it up. It was a 6-7 page Word document, tiny font, single spaced. The first line was, "Alan, I know you can write, but," and then it just proceeded to tear apart, break down, disassemble, all my beautifully depictions of small town Ireland, which she said were very good, but she said what you've done is you've written a beautiful collection of loosely connected vignettes, and so I started looking at that line for about a week, telling myself over and over again. I said, great, not only am I not yet a novelist, I'm no longer a short story writer. I'm a writer of loosely connected vignettes, which now occurs to me to be very, it's very trendy and hybrid text and all of that. It's, but I still have that version. I'll change the title sometime. When it's needed. Yeah. But that threatened to send me to the hit. That one line did threaten to send me to the hit.
About a T-shirt or something.
It took me about a week to summon the energy to read the rest of the email, and then another week after that to charge the battery to take on all the points and observations and suggestions that the email had.
And which version is better?
The next version.
And the novel is based on a story from Psychotic Episodes?
Yeah, that's probably a fair observation. There's a small story buried in the second half of the collection called Runaways. A guy and a girl, very young. The guy and the girl in Ithaca are a little older, but they have this, they're unhappy with their lot, which is suggested in the story. The novel allows you explore that a little further in the psychology of the pair of troubled souls, if you like. But yeah, I mean, I always thought that particular story was something incomplete about it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what was that drove you to go back and think, I'm going to commit myself to this huge endeavour of a novel.
Well, it was just,
so there was some days they wouldn't leave you alone, or the situation, or the...
Yeah, well, the two of them were clearly unhappy, and they had this sort of they fabricated this magical world for themselves to retreat into, to deal or not deal with the reality of their lives together, and I suppose the novel allowed me to really, just dive into that make-believe world, if you like.
I know that your short stories from this collection that you were working on, I don't know if that's the same novel that you're talking about that you finished with So Painful, was it? And I know that came from a short story as well, which is very interesting, isn't it? So what was it about that story that compelled you to...
It's the only time it's the only time it's ever actually happened to me. I had written, there's a story in this collection called Goodbye My Coney Island Baby. It's about Tom Waits, that was that called? Yeah, it was. Yeah. Okay. So I forget what I was going to say. Oh yeah, okay. So the characters, the two characters in the story are a pair of middle-aged lovers married to other people who have been meeting once a month for 18 years on Coney Island in New York, not the Coney Island up the road. Although that could be the sequel.
Yes.
So I'd written the story and I think I wrote the story in about 2010, and it was finished and it was published out in America. I think the story is probably around 8,000 words, and that was it. It was done. And then, and this is the only time it's ever happened, I woke up about 6 months later thinking about those characters. And just as Alan said, it was like there was something unfinished about them. This happened to me the first day I ignored it, and then it happened a few more times. And so eventually I just started just writing little pieces about the people that were in the story, just to kind of get them out of my head. And then after maybe 6 months of that, I had a sort of a little accumulation of chunks. And I realised that this was a much bigger story. But the funny thing about it is that the actual basic plotline is not far advanced from the short story, but there's a lot more, you know, in the world around them. And so it was just a case of, at least to get through the first draft, it was just sort of to get them to leave me alone. But then once I had that much done, and I thought that, you know, I could break this up, change their names and publish them as new stories, and that didn't really work. So it sort of took its own form in the first draft. I think it's probably on about the 30th draft now, but it's finished, and I'm not allowing myself to go near it. It's just in my drawer, and there it'll stay until I'm ready to have a look at it again.